The scream of the ewes woke Sarah Aldridge at 3 in the morning for the 14th night in a row. She bolted upright in bed, heart hammering against her ribs, and reached for the shotgun propped against her nightstand. The livestock were penned close to the house, close enough that she could hear them from her bedroom window, and the sound they made now was pure terror. Not the bleating complaint of animals disturbed by a fox or coyote. This was different. This was the sound prey made when it knew death had come. Sarah pulled on her boots without bothering to change out of her pajama pants and thermal shirt, grabbed the shotgun and a flashlight, and ran downstairs. The old farmhouse groaned around her, wood settling in the October chill. She'd inherited this place from her grandmother 6 months ago, 200 acres of rolling pasture in rural Virginia, and she'd been determined to make it work. Sell the wool, maybe get some chickens come spring, grow vegetables in the south field. Live a quiet life away from the city that had chewed her up and spit her out. Except something had been hunting her flock for 2 weeks straight, and quiet was the last thing her life had become. She burst through the back door into the cold night air. Her breath came out in white puffs as she ran toward the sheep pen, flashlight beam bouncing wildly. The motion sensor lights she'd installed 3 days ago should have triggered, but they hung dark and useless. Cut wires, she'd discovered yesterday morning. Whatever was doing this had intelligence. The sheep were pressed into the far corner of their enclosure, a heaving mass of wool and frightened eyes. Sarah counted them quickly, desperately. 18. There should be 20. She swept the flashlight across the pen and found the gap in the fence, boards splintered outward as though something massive had simply walked through them. And there, just beyond the fence line, she saw it. The creature stood at the edge of the tree line, easily 8 feet tall, its body a twisted mockery of human and animal form. Matted fur covered most of it, but the limbs were wrong, jointed in places they shouldn't be. Its eyes caught the flashlight beam and reflected back green and malevolent. In its clawed hands, it held one of her ewes, the animal limp and bloodied. Sarah raised the shotgun, hands shaking. She'd fired at this thing 4 times over the past 2 weeks. She'd hit it at least twice, she was sure of that, had seen it stagger, but it kept coming back. "Drop it," she said, knowing it was useless. The creature didn't respond to words. It had never responded to anything except violence, and even that only drove it away temporarily. The thing that shouldn't exist tilted its head, studying her. Then it turned and melted back into the forest, taking her sheep with it. Sarah stood there in the dark, shotgun lowered, fighting back tears of exhaustion and frustration. She'd called the police the first 3 nights. They'd sent someone out, filed reports, suggested it was coyotes or a black bear. When she'd insisted it was something else, something wrong, they'd started suggesting she get more sleep, maybe talk to someone about the stress of running a farm alone. She'd called wildlife control. They'd set traps. The creature had torn them apart and left the pieces arranged in a perfect circle in her front yard. She'd tried staying up all night with the gun. The one night she'd finally dozed off at 4 in the morning, it had killed 3 sheep in under 10 minutes. Now it was November 1st, she'd lost 7 animals in total, and she was running out of options. The flock was her livelihood. Without them, she'd lose the farm. She'd have to go back to the city, back to the corporate job that had left her hollow and anxious, back to the life she'd fled. Sarah walked slowly back to the house as the first hints of dawn began to gray the eastern sky. She needed help, real help, but she didn't know where to find it. The answer came that evening in the form of a stranger at her door. Sarah had spent the day reinforcing the fence, nailing boards across the gap, knowing it would do nothing but needing to do something anyway. Her hands were blistered, her shoulders ached, and she was considering whether she could rig some kind of alarm system with the old cowbells in the barn when the knock came. 3 sharp raps, confident and commanding. She wasn't expecting anyone. The farm was miles from town, down a long gravel drive that didn't invite casual visitors. Sarah grabbed the shotgun, checked the chamber, and went to the door. The man on her porch was the most beautiful and terrifying thing she'd ever seen. He stood well over 6 feet tall, dressed in black from head to toe, clothing that looked expensive and somehow timeless. A long coat that might have been from this century or the last, tailored perfectly to his broad shoulders. But it was his face that stopped her breath. Pale skin, so white it was almost luminous in the porch light. Hair the color of fresh snow, falling past his shoulders. features sharp and aristocratic, ageless and perfect. And his eyes, dark as winter midnight, fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel pinned in place. "Sarah Aldridge," he said, and his voice was like smoke and silk, accented with something old European that she couldn't quite place. "Who are you?" She kept the shotgun visible, but not pointed at him, yet. "My name is Casimir Zorya. I'm here about your problem." "I don't know what you're talking about." A small smile crossed his perfect lips, not quite reaching those dark eyes. "The creature hunting your livestock, the one you've been fighting alone for 2 weeks. I can help." Sarah's grip tightened on the gun. "How do you know about that?" "Because I make it my business to know when something supernatural threatens the innocent." "May I come in?" This conversation would be better held inside. Every instinct screamed at her not to let this stranger into her home. But those same instincts also told her that he was connected to the truth of what was happening, that he had answers she desperately needed. "You can stay on the porch," she said. Casimir inclined his head, accepting her terms with grace. "The creature is called a Wendigo, a spirit of hunger and winter, twisted into physical form. They're rare this far south, but not unheard of. This one likely came down from the mountains, drawn by desperation or madness." A Wendigo! Sarah had heard the word before, in stories, in horror movies. "Those aren't real." "You've seen it. You know better than to say that." He had her there. She'd been telling herself for 2 weeks that what she was seeing couldn't be real, but she'd still seen it. "Fine, say I believe you. Why are you here? What do you want?" "I want to kill it before it kills you." Casimir said it matter-of-factly, as though discussing the weather. "It's already adapting to your patterns, learning your defenses. Soon it will stop taking sheep and come for you instead, probably tomorrow night, given the escalation I've observed." Cold fear washed through her. "You've been watching?" "I arrived in the area 3 days ago, following reports of livestock deaths with unusual characteristics. I've been tracking the Wendigo since then, learning its habits." He paused, studying her face. "I wanted to intervene sooner, but I needed to be certain of what we were dealing with. Wendigos are dangerous, even for my kind." "Your kind?" Sarah's mouth went dry. "What are you?" Casimir's smile widened slightly, showing a flash of elongated canines. "I think you already know, Sarah." She did. Some part of her had known from the moment she'd opened the door. The impossible beauty, the pale skin and white hair, the predatory grace, the way he'd said the word supernatural as though he belonged to that category himself. "Vampire," she whispered. "Yes. And before you consider using that shotgun, know that it wouldn't do you any good. Also know that I have no intention of harming you. I hunt things like the Wendigo. I protect human territories from supernatural threats. It's what I've done for a very long time." Sarah's mind raced. This was insane. All of it. And yet it made a horrible kind of sense. If monsters were real, if creatures like the Wendigo existed, then why not vampires too? Why not hunters who stalked other predators? "Why?" she asked. "Why would you help me?" "Because it's what I do," Casimir said simply. "I am king of the vampire covens in this region, and with that title comes responsibility. The Wendigo is in my territory, threatening my people. You are human, yes, but you live within the bounds of my protection, whether you knew it or not. I never asked for your protection. Nevertheless, you have it." He straightened. "All business now." "The Wendigo will come tonight. It's grown bold and it knows you're weakening. I will be here to end it. You should go inside, lock your doors, and stay away from the windows. This will be over by dawn." "This is my farm," Sarah said, anger flaring through the fear and confusion. "Those are my animals it's been killing. If you're going to fight this thing here, I'm not hiding in my house like a damsel in a tower." Something flickered in Casimir's dark eyes. Respect, maybe. Or amusement. "You wouldn't survive 5 seconds against a Wendigo, Sarah. Your courage is admirable, but it would only get you killed." "Then tell me what I can do. There has to be something." He studied her for a long moment. "Go inside. Turn off all your lights. Make the house look unoccupied. The Wendigo will focus on the sheep pen and I'll be waiting. If by some chance I fail, if things go wrong, you run. Don't look back, don't try to help. Just run and don't stop until you reach town. Do you understand? Sarah wanted to argue, but the steel in his voice told her it would be useless. This man, this vampire, was used to being obeyed, and despite her pride, she knew he was right. She'd barely survived encounters with the Wendigo when all she'd done was fire a gun at it from a distance. In a real fight, she'd be a liability. Fine, she said, but I want answers when this is over. Real answers about what's been happening, about what you are, about all of it. If we both survive the night, I'll tell you anything you want to know. Casimir glanced at the darkening sky. Now go. It will be here soon. Sarah retreated inside, closing and locking the door. She watched from the window as Casimir walked away from the house, moving with inhuman grace toward the sheep pen. He shed his long coat, draping it over the fence, and stood in the center of the enclosure in just his black shirt and trousers. Waiting. The sheep oddly didn't panic at his presence. They milled around him calmly, as though they sensed he wasn't there to hurt them. Sarah turned off the lights as instructed, then positioned herself by the living room window where she had a clear view of the pen. She kept the shotgun close, just in case. The night settled in, cold and clear, a half-moon rising over the trees. An hour passed, then two. Sarah's eyes ached from staring into the darkness. She was beginning to wonder if the Wendigo would even come when she saw movement at the tree line. The creature emerged slowly, cautiously. It had learned to be wary of her gun and her lights. But tonight everything was quiet, still. The sheep were there for the taking. It moved toward the pen, hunched low, claws extended. Sarah held her breath. Casimir struck so fast she almost missed it. One moment he was standing still in the center of the pen, the next he was on the Wendigo, moving with speed that blurred the air. He hit the creature like a freight train, driving it back from the fence. The Wendigo screamed, a sound like ice cracking mixed with human agony, and lashed out with claws that could tear through wood. Casimir dodged, twisted, countered with strikes of his own. Sarah watched in horrified fascination as the two supernatural beings fought, their battle nothing like the clean choreography of movies. This was brutal and primal, all raw strength and killing intent. The Wendigo was larger, but Casimir was faster and clearly more skilled. He stayed inside the creature's reach, landing blows that would have shattered human bones. But the Wendigo was tough, resilient, healing from wounds almost as quickly as they were inflicted. They fought across the farmyard, destroying Sarah's carefully repaired fence, tearing up earth. The Wendigo got hold of Casimir at one point, its claws raking across his chest, tearing his shirt and leaving deep gouges in pale skin. Sarah gasped, but Casimir barely seemed to notice. He grabbed the Wendigo's arm and twisted, breaking it with a crack that echoed across the farm. The creature howled and pulled back, favoring its injured limb. Casimir pressed his advantage, relentless. He was beautiful and terrible to watch, moving with the precision of a trained warrior and the savagery of an apex predator. "You don't belong here," Casimir said, his voice carrying clearly through the night. "Return to the mountains or die. Choose now." The Wendigo's response was to charge, broken arm already knitting back together. But the injury had slowed it enough. Casimir sidestepped, caught the creature by its throat with one hand, and drove it down into the ground with force that cratered the earth. "Wrong choice," Casimir said quietly. What happened next, Sarah couldn't fully see. Casimir moved too fast, his hands becoming weapons, tearing into the Wendigo with methodical efficiency. The creature's screams cut off abruptly. There was a wet, final sound, and then silence. Casimir stood, breathing hard, covered in dark blood that looked black in the moonlight. At his feet, the Wendigo lay in pieces, already beginning to dissolve into ash and shadow, its physical form breaking down now that the spirit animating it had been destroyed. Sarah realized she was shaking. She'd just watched something impossible, something that rewrote everything she thought she knew about the world. Casimir looked toward the house, directly at the window where she stood. Even from this distance, she could see his eyes, dark and intense. She went to the door and opened it. Casimir walked slowly back across the farmyard, his wounds already healing, the gouges in his chest knitting closed as she watched. By the time he reached the porch, only the torn shirt remained as evidence of injury. "It's done," he said. "The Wendigo is dead. It won't trouble you again." "Thank you," Sarah said, and the words felt inadequate for what he'd just done, for the life he'd just saved. "You're welcome." Casimir retrieved his coat from where he'd left it, shrugging it on despite the bloodstains. "You should rest. You haven't slept properly in weeks. You said you'd give me answers." "I did say that." He glanced at the sky. "But dawn is still hours away, and you've had enough shocks for one night. I'll stay if you want. Make sure nothing else disturbs you. We can talk in the morning." Sarah knew she should send him away. He was a vampire, a creature from nightmares, something that drank blood and killed to survive. Every horror movie she'd ever seen told her to run, but he'd just saved her life. He'd fought a monster to protect her and her farm, and he'd done it without asking for anything in return. "Stay," she said. "Please, I'll make coffee." A genuine smile crossed Casimir's face, warm and unexpected. "I would like that." They sat at her kitchen table as the night wore on, 2 mugs of coffee between them. Casimir didn't drink his, just held it as though appreciating the warmth, but Sarah needed the caffeine and the ritual of normalcy. "How long have you been a vampire?" she asked. 347 years. I was turned in Romania in 1679 during a time of great upheaval. The details are unpleasant and not particularly relevant." 300 years, Sarah repeated, trying to wrap her mind around it. "And you've been hunting things like the Wendigo all that time?" "Not all that time. For the first century I was a terror. I killed without conscience, took what I wanted, lived as a predator among prey." Casimir's expression was somber. "I was everything humans fear when they think of vampires. But time teaches you things if you're willing to learn. I grew tired of the emptiness, the endless cycle of feeding and fleeing. I wanted to be more than a monster. So you became a protector instead." "In a sense. I rose through vampire society, eventually becoming king of the Eastern Covens. With power came responsibility. I realized that if vampires wanted to survive in the modern world, we needed to control ourselves, to police our own kind. And that meant dealing with other threats too, things like the Wendigo that drew attention we couldn't afford." Sarah sipped her coffee, studying him. In the warm kitchen light, he looked less terrifying than he had on the porch. Still impossibly beautiful, still clearly inhuman, but there was something in his eyes that seemed sad and old and genuine. "Do you really drink blood?" she asked. "Yes, I need it to survive, but I don't kill. I have agreements with blood banks with donors who understand what I am and provide willingly. It's not the life I imagined when I was human, but it's the life I've built." "And other vampires? Are there many of you?" "More than you'd think, fewer than legend suggests. We're spread out, territorial by nature. This region has perhaps 24, all under my authority. Most are like me, trying to exist peacefully. A few are problems that need to be managed." Sarah had 1,000 more questions, but exhaustion was catching up with her now that the adrenaline was fading. Casimir seemed to notice. "You should sleep," he said gently. "You're safe now. I'll watch until dawn, make sure nothing else comes." "You don't have to do that." "I want to." He stood, moving with that inhuman grace. "Rest, Sarah. You've earned it." She wanted to argue, but her body was already demanding sleep. "Will I see you again, after tonight?" Casimir paused in the doorway. "Do you want to?" Sarah surprised herself by saying, "Yes." "Then you will." He smiled, and it transformed his face into something breathtaking. "Sleep well." Sarah dragged herself upstairs, fell into bed fully clothed, and slept without dreams for the first time in 2 weeks. When she woke, the sun was high and bright, streaming through her windows. She went downstairs to find the kitchen cleaned, her coffee mug washed and set by the sink. On the table was a note written in elegant, old-fashioned script. "The fence is repaired. Your sheep are counted and safe. If you need me, speak my name to the night, and I will hear." Sarah picked up the note, running her fingers over the words. She should be terrified. She should be barricading her house and researching how to kill vampires. Instead, all she could think about was the way Casimir had fought for her, the way he'd sat at her table and answered her questions with patient honesty. She wanted to see him again, needed to, in a way she couldn't quite explain. The next week passed in surreal calm. The sheep were undisturbed, the farm quiet. Sarah threw herself into work, trying to repair the damage the Wendigo had caused, trying to process everything that had happened. But at night, alone in the farmhouse, she thought about Casimir. She wondered where he was, what he was doing. She wondered if he was thinking about her too. On the 8th night, she made a decision. Sarah stepped out onto her back porch, into the cold November darkness. She felt foolish, but the note had been clear. "Casimir," she said to the night air. "Casimir Zorya." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then she felt a shift in the air, a presence that hadn't been there before. She turned to find him standing at the edge of her porch, materializing out of shadow and moonlight. "Sarah," he said, and his voice was warm with pleasure. "You called. You said I could. I'm glad you did." He stepped closer, into the light spilling from her windows. He was dressed more casually tonight, dark jeans and a sweater that somehow still looked elegant on him. "Is something wrong?" "No, everything's fine. The farm is good, the sheep are safe, She trailed off, not sure how to explain. "You wanted company," Casimir finished gently. "Yes. Is that strange?" "Not to me." He smiled. "I've been hoping you would call. I wanted to give you time, space to process everything. But I've been thinking about you." Sarah's heart skipped. "You have?" "Constantly." Casimir moved closer, and Sarah caught his scent, something like winter pine and old books. "You fascinated me from the moment I first saw you, standing on this porch with your shotgun, exhausted and terrified but refusing to back down. You're stronger than you know, Sarah. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm still trying to understand what's real anymore." "That's natural. Your world has expanded to include things you never imagined. It's overwhelming." Casimir gestured to the porch chairs. "May I stay for a while?" "I'd like that." They sat together in the cold night, talking about everything and nothing. Casimir told her stories of his long life, of the places he'd seen and the changes he'd witnessed. Sarah told him about her grandmother, about inheriting the farm, about her decision to leave the city and build a different kind of life. "You're braver than most humans I've met," Casimir said. "To leave security and familiarity, to strike out alone, that takes courage." "Or stupidity," Sarah said with a laugh. "I had no idea what I was doing when I moved here. You were following your instincts. That's wisdom, not stupidity." Casimir looked out over the dark fields. "This is a good place. Peaceful. I can see why you chose it. Do you have a place like this? Somewhere that's yours?" "I have an estate about 30 miles from here. An old mansion that I've owned for a century. It's too large for one person, really, but I like the space. The privacy." He glanced at her. "I'd like to show it to you sometime if you're interested." Sarah's pulse quickened. "I'd like that." They fell into a comfortable silence, and Sarah realized how natural this felt, sitting here with a vampire in the dark. It should have been strange, frightening. Instead, it was the most at peace she'd felt since moving to the farm. "I should go," Casimir said eventually. "Dawn isn't far off, and I need to be home before then." "The sun really will hurt you?" "Kill me, actually, if I'm exposed long enough. It's one of the few things that can." He stood, and Sarah stood with him. "Thank you for calling me tonight, Sarah. It's been a long time since I enjoyed an evening this much. Will you come back? If you want me to, I'll come back every night." Casimir reached out, hesitated, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers were cool but not cold, gentle despite the strength she knew they held. "I find myself very much wanting to know you better." "I want that too," Sarah whispered. "Then I'll return tomorrow night." "Sleep well, Sarah." He was gone between one breath and the next, vanishing into the darkness with that impossible vampire speed. Sarah stood on the porch for a long time after, touching the place where his fingers had brushed her skin, her heart racing with something that felt dangerously close to hope. Casimir came back the next night and the night after that. It became a pattern, a ritual they both anticipated. He would arrive after dark, and they would talk for hours, sometimes on the porch, sometimes in the kitchen over coffee that he never drank but always accepted. Sarah learned that he loved classical music and old poetry, that he spoke 7 languages, that he'd witnessed historical events she'd only read about in books. He was funny when he wanted to be, telling stories with a dry wit that made her laugh. He was also thoughtful and attentive, asking about her day, her dreams, her fears, and slowly, carefully, Sarah felt herself falling for him. It was ridiculous. He was a vampire, an immortal creature who'd lived for centuries. She was a human farmer who could barely keep her sheep safe. They came from different worlds, different species. It couldn't work. But her heart didn't seem to care about logic. 3 weeks after the Wendigo's death, Casimir took her to his estate. Sarah drove her old pickup truck down the long, winding driveway, following the directions he'd given her. The mansion appeared through the trees like something out of a Gothic novel, all stone and tall windows, elegant and imposing. Casimir was waiting at the entrance, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt that made his pale skin seem to glow. He smiled when he saw her, and Sarah's heart did that stupid fluttering thing it always did around him now. "Welcome to my home," he said, offering his hand to help her from the truck. Inside was even more impressive than the exterior. High ceilings, antique furniture that was probably worth more than her entire farm, artwork that looked like it belonged in museums. But it was also surprisingly warm, lived in. Books were stacked on tables. Music played softly from somewhere, and a fire crackled in a massive fireplace. "This is beautiful," Sarah said, turning in a slow circle in the main hall. "It's been my sanctuary for a long time." Casimir led her deeper into the house, through rooms filled with treasures from different eras. "I'll give you the full tour, but first I made dinner. For you, I mean. I remember you mentioning you like Italian food." He'd cooked for her. A vampire who didn't eat had prepared an entire meal just because she'd mentioned a preference in passing. Sarah felt something warm and overwhelming bloom in her chest. The dining room was set for one, the table laden with pasta and bread and salad that smelled incredible. Casimir seated her with old-world courtesy, then sat across from her, content to watch as she ate. "This is amazing," Sarah said around a mouthful of pasta. "Where did you learn to cook if you can't eat?" "I can taste, even if I can't digest. And I've had centuries to practice. Cooking for someone you care about is one of life's great pleasures. I'm glad I can still do that, even if I can't share the meal." "Someone you care about," Sarah repeated softly. Casimir met her eyes. "Yes, Sarah. I care about you. Very much. I care about you too." She set down her fork, suddenly needing to say this. "I know it's fast and I know we're from completely different worlds, but these past few weeks have been the happiest I've had in years. You make me happy, Casimir." He was around the table in an instant, kneeling beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "You make me happy too. I've lived a long time, Sarah. I've known many people, felt many things. But what I feel when I'm with you is different, stronger. You've woken something in me that I thought was long dead." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm falling in love with you." Casimir brought her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles with reverent gentleness. "I know the complications, the impossibility of it, but I can't deny what I feel anymore." "Then don't." Sarah cupped his face, marveling at the cool smoothness of his skin. "I'm falling in love with you too, Casimir. I don't care if it's impossible. I just care that it's real." He kissed her then, soft and careful, as though she were something precious that might break. Sarah melted into it, into him, wrapping her arms around his neck and kissing him back with all the emotion she'd been holding in. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Casimir rested his forehead against hers. "I want to be with you," he said. "Truly with you. But you need to understand what that means. I'm a vampire, Sarah. I'll never age, never change. You will. In 20 years, you'll look like my mother. In 40, like my grandmother. And eventually, you'll die. And I'll go on without you." "I know," Sarah said. "I've thought about that. It terrifies me. But I'd rather have 20 or 40 years with you than a lifetime without you. There are other options. Casimir pulled back slightly, his dark eyes searching hers. I could turn you, make you like me. We could have eternity together. Sarah's breath caught. She'd known this was a possibility, but hearing him say it made it real and terrifying and tempting all at once. Is that what you want? I want you to have the choice, Casimir said carefully. I won't take your humanity from you without your full consent. But yes, selfishly, I would love to have forever with you. I would love to not watch you age and die while I remain unchanged. I need time to think about that, Sarah said. It's not a decision I can make lightly. Of course, take all the time you need. Casimir kissed her forehead. I'm not going anywhere, Sarah. Whatever you decide, I'll be here. They spent the rest of the evening tangled together on the couch in his library. Sarah curled against his chest while he read poetry to her in languages she didn't understand, but found beautiful anyway. It felt right, being here with him. Natural, despite all the ways it shouldn't be. When the hour grew late, Casimir drove her home in his sleek black car, unwilling to let her make the journey alone in the dark. He walked her to her door, kissed her goodnight with a tenderness that made her ache, and promised to see her the next evening. Sarah went to bed that night with her mind spinning, her heart full, and her future more uncertain than it had ever been. The next month was the happiest of Sarah's life. She and Casimir fell into an easy rhythm, spending every evening together. He helped her with the farm sometimes, using his supernatural strength to repair things she'd been putting off, to move heavy equipment she couldn't manage alone. They cooked together in her kitchen, went for long walks across her property under the stars, and talked about everything from philosophy to her favorite trashy TV shows. They grew closer in every way. Casimir was patient and respectful, never pushing her further than she was ready to go, but the physical side of their relationship deepened naturally. Sarah learned the feel of his body, the taste of his kiss, the way he trembled when she touched certain places. And she learned what it meant to be loved by someone who'd lived centuries, who brought all that experience and intensity to caring for her. Casimir was attentive and generous, always thinking of ways to make her smile. He brought her books he thought she'd enjoy, fixed things around the farm before she even noticed they were broken, and listened to her ramble about wool quality and sheep nutrition with genuine interest. But the question of turning still hung between them, unspoken but present. Sarah thought about it constantly. Becoming a vampire would mean giving up the sun, giving up human food, giving up the life she'd built here, but it would also mean staying with Casimir, not for decades, but for centuries. It would mean never having to say goodbye. She was leaning toward yes. She knew she was. But something held her back from saying it out loud. That something crystallized into terror on a cold December night. Sarah was in the barn, checking on the sheep one last time before bed, when she heard voices from the driveway. Male voices, multiple, angry. She grabbed her shotgun and moved to the barn door, peering out. 3 men stood in her driveway, and even in the dim light from her porch, she could tell they weren't human. They had the same pale skin as Casimir, the same predatory grace. Vampires. But where Casimir's presence was commanding and protective, these 3 radiated menace. We know he comes here, one of them said, loud enough to carry. We know the king has been playing house with a human. Come out, little human. Let's talk about your pet vampire. Sarah's hand shook on the gun. She didn't know who these vampires were or what they wanted, but instinct told her they were dangerous. Leave, she called out, trying to keep her voice steady. You're not welcome here. The 3 vampires laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Not welcome? This is Rich. Tell me, human, did Casimir explain vampire politics to you? Did he mention that some of us think his protection of humans is a weakness, that his authority has been questioned? I don't care about your politics. Get off my property. Or what? You'll shoot us? The lead vampire, a tall man with dark hair, stepped closer. Silver bullets might slow us down, but they won't stop us. And we heal fast. Sarah raised the shotgun. Try me. The vampire's eyes flashed red. I don't think you understand your situation. Your leverage. Casimir cares about you, which makes you valuable. Come with us quietly, and maybe we won't burn your pretty farm to the ground. Sarah! Casimir's voice cut through the night like a blade. Sarah had never heard him sound like that, pure fury and lethal intent. He appeared beside her so fast the air cracked, placing himself between her and the three vampires. Every line of his body radiated deadly promise. "Kieran," Casimir said, his voice ice-cold. "You have 5 seconds to leave my territory before I tear you apart." The dark-haired vampire, Kieran apparently, smiled. "Your territory? That's the whole problem, Zorya. You've gone soft. Too concerned with protecting humans, too weak to rule properly. There are those of us who think it's time for new leadership. Then challenge me properly in front of the council. Don't skulk around terrorizing innocents." "Where's the fun in that?" Kieran's gaze slid to Sarah. "Besides, this was enlightening. I didn't believe the rumors that the great Casimir Zorya had fallen in love with a human. But here you are, ready to fight your own kind over a fragile mortal who'll be dead in a blink. It's pathetic." Casimir moved, a blur of speed and violence. He hit Kieran with enough force to send the other vampire flying back 20 feet. The other 2 vampires scattered, circling. "Sarah, get in the house," Casimir ordered without taking his eyes off his opponents. "Now." Sarah ran for the farmhouse, gun still in hand. She made it to the porch before the sounds of fighting erupted behind her. She spun, unable to leave Casimir, and watched in horror as he fought all 3 vampires at once. It was a different kind of battle than the one with the Wendigo. These opponents were fast like him, strong like him. They coordinated their attacks, coming at him from multiple angles. Casimir held his own, his centuries of experience evident in every move, but Sarah could see he was being pressed. One of the vampires broke away from the fight, heading for her. Sarah fired the shotgun, hitting the vampire square in the chest. He staggered but kept coming. She fired again and again, backing toward the door. Casimir roared in fury and was suddenly there, intercepting the vampire before he could reach the porch. Casimir grabbed the attacker by the throat and slammed him into the ground with bone-shattering force. "You don't touch her," Casimir snarled. "You don't even look at her." But the distraction cost him. Kieran struck from behind, claws raking across Casimir's back. Casimir spun, bleeding but undeterred, and engaged both opponents with renewed ferocity. Sarah watched helplessly, her gun empty, as the vampire she loved fought for his life. For her life. The battle raged across her farmyard, destroying everything in its path. She wanted to help, but she was useless, just a human with an empty shotgun while gods fought in her driveway. Then Casimir caught Kieran in a grapple, the 2 of them locked together with killing intent. The other 2 vampires tried to intervene, but Casimir was faster. He wrenched Kieran around, getting behind him, and with a swift, brutal motion broke the other vampire's neck. Kieran dropped, not dead, but paralyzed. The other 2 vampires froze. "Tell whoever sent you that if they want my position, they know how to challenge me properly," Casimir said, breathing hard. "Come at me through official channels, or don't come at all. But if any vampire threatens Sarah again, if any of you even speak her name, I will hunt you to the ends of the earth and make your deaths last decades. Am I clear?" The 2 conscious vampires grabbed their paralyzed companion and fled, disappearing into the night with supernatural speed. Casimir stood alone in the ruined driveway, covered in blood, shaking with rage and adrenaline. Then he turned to Sarah, and his expression shifted to immediate concern. "Are you hurt?" He was on the porch in an instant, hands running over her, checking for injuries. "I'm fine. You're the one who's bleeding." Sarah touched his face, his chest, seeing the wounds that were already starting to heal. "Casimir, what was that? Who were they?" "Rivals. Idiots who think I've grown weak because I choose to protect humans instead of preying on them." Casimir pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I should have anticipated this. I should have protected you better." "You saved me. Again." Sarah buried her face in his shoulder, trying not to shake. "But they said you were in danger. That other vampires think you're weak because of me. They're fools, and they won't dare move against me directly. But..." Casimir pulled back, his dark eyes filled with pain. "This will happen again, Sarah. As long as you're human, as long as we're together, you're a target. My enemies will use you to get to me. Then what do we do? I don't know. Casimir cupped her face in his hands. I won't give you up, I can't. But I can't stand the thought of you in danger because of me either. Sarah's mind raced, and suddenly the decision that had seemed so difficult became crystal clear. If she was going to be in danger anyway, if being with Casimir meant being a target, then there was only one real choice. Turn me, she said. Casimir went very still. Sarah, I mean it. Turn me into a vampire. She gripped his wrists, holding his hands against her face. I've been thinking about it for weeks, going back and forth, but those vampires just made it obvious. I love you, Casimir. I want to be with you. And I don't want to be a liability, a weakness you have to protect. I want to stand beside you as an equal. You're not a liability. You're everything to me. Then let me be everything as a vampire. Let me have forever with you. Sarah kissed him, hard and desperate. Please, Casimir, I'm sure. It will hurt. The transformation is agonizing. I don't care. You'll never see the sun again, never taste food, never have children or grow old or have any of the human experiences you should have. I don't want those things without you. Sarah's eyes burned with tears. I want you, Casimir, just you, for as long as we both exist. Casimir searched her face for a long moment. Then he kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Are you absolutely certain? Once this is done, there's no going back. I've never been more certain of anything. Then yes. Casimir swept her up in his arms, carrying her into the house. I'll turn you, Sarah. I'll make you mine in every way, and I'll love you for eternity. He carried her upstairs to her bedroom, laying her gently on the bed. The room was familiar, safe, the place where she'd slept and dreamed and slowly fallen in love with the impossible. It will be easier if you're relaxed, Casimir said, lying beside her, stroking her hair. I'll make it as quick as I can, but the venom has to work through your system. You'll feel like you're dying because, in a sense, you are. But I'll be here the entire time. I won't leave you. I trust you, Sarah said simply. Casimir kissed her deeply, pouring love and promise into the contact. Then he moved to her throat, his lips trailing along the column of her neck. I love you, Sarah Aldridge, he whispered against her skin. I love you, Casimir Zorya, she whispered back. His fangs pierced her throat, sharp and clean. The pain was immediate but not unbearable, a sting that faded quickly into something almost pleasant. Sarah felt her blood flowing out, felt Casimir drinking deeply, taking what he needed. Her heart began to slow, her vision dimming. Just as darkness began to take her, she felt Casimir bite his own wrist and press it to her lips. Drink, he commanded. Drink and live. Sarah drank. His blood was strange, cold and thick and powerful. It burned going down, spreading fire through her veins. The last thing she heard before unconsciousness took her was Casimir's voice, soothing and steady. Sleep now, my love. When you wake, we'll have forever. The pain was worse than anything Sarah had ever imagined. She woke screaming, her body on fire from the inside out. Every cell was changing, dying and being reborn as something new. It felt like being torn apart and rebuilt at the same time. Casimir was there through all of it, holding her, whispering words of comfort and love. He wiped her forehead when she burned with fever, held her still when convulsions racked her body. Time lost meaning. She didn't know if hours or days were passing, only that the agony seemed endless. But slowly, gradually, the pain began to recede. The fire in her veins cooled to a manageable burn, then to a warm hum. Her senses sharpened, sounds and smells becoming almost overwhelming in their clarity. Her vision cleared, and she could see in the dark room as though it were daylight. Sarah, Casimir's voice, careful and hopeful. Can you hear me? Yes. Her own voice sounded different, richer somehow. Is it done? It's done. You've been transforming for 2 days. How do you feel? Sarah took inventory of her new body. Every sensation was heightened, strange but not unpleasant. She felt strong, powerful in a way she never had before, and hungry, though not for food. I feel incredible, she said, sitting up. And thirsty. That's the hunger. You'll need to feed soon. Casimir helped her stand, steadying her when her new strength made her movements clumsy. "Come, look at yourself." He led her to the mirror, and Sarah gasped. The woman looking back at her was familiar but transformed. Her skin was pale as moonlight, luminous and flawless. Her hair seemed darker, shinier, but it was her eyes that stunned her. Now a deep crimson that would fade to something closer to Casimir's dark midnight once she fed properly. "I'm beautiful," she whispered. "You were always beautiful. Now you're eternal." Casimir wrapped his arms around her from behind, and Sarah could see them together in the mirror, two pale, perfect creatures. "How do you feel? Really?" "Strong, alive, weirdly, even though I know I'm technically dead. And I can hear everything. The sheep outside, something moving in the walls. Your voice is like music." She turned in his arms. "I don't regret it, Casimir. This is what I wanted." He kissed her then, deep and claiming, and Sarah kissed back with her new strength. The passion between them ignited, fiercer than before now that she didn't have to be careful, now that they were truly equals. They made love as the new night fell, Sarah exploring her enhanced body and his with equal wonder. Everything was more intense, every touch electric, every sensation magnified. Casimir worshipped her like the precious thing she was, and Sarah met him with matching passion, no longer fragile, no longer afraid of being broken. Afterward, lying tangled together in the sheets, Sarah felt complete in a way she never had before. "We need to feed you properly," Casimir said, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "And then we need to present you to the Vampire Council. Let them know that you're no longer a vulnerable human, but a vampire under my protection and authority. Will that stop the attacks?" "It will change the dynamic entirely. You're not a weakness to exploit anymore, you're my mate. That's a different proposition altogether." Casimir's eyes darkened with promise. "And anyone who threatens my mate will answer to me." "Your mate." Sarah liked the sound of that. "Is that official?" "It is if you want it to be. I'm asking you, Sarah Aldridge, to be mine in the eyes of vampire society. My partner, my equal, my queen, for as long as we both exist." "Yes," Sarah said without hesitation. "Yes to all of it." Casimir's smile was radiant. "Then we'll make it official at the next council meeting. But first, let me teach you how to hunt. You need blood, and I'd prefer your first feeding to be under controlled circumstances." He took her out into the night, teaching her how to move with her new speed, how to use her enhanced senses to track prey. They found a deer in the woods beyond her property, and Casimir showed her how to feed cleanly, how to take what she needed without causing unnecessary suffering. The blood was strange at first, alien, but her new body craved it. Sarah drank until the hunger receded, until she felt strong and centered and complete. This was what she was now. A predator, a vampire, a creature of the night. And it felt right. Over the next weeks, Casimir taught her everything she needed to know about being a vampire. How to control her strength so she didn't accidentally break things. How to move among humans without drawing attention. The laws and customs of vampire society. The extent of her new abilities. Sarah discovered she was faster than most newborn vampires. Stronger, too. Casimir said it was rare, but not unheard of, that she'd likely been turned at the perfect moment, when her will to live and transform was at its peak. She also discovered she could still run the farm, though she had to hire help for daytime tasks. The sheep didn't fear her the way they might fear other predators, perhaps sensing that she meant them no harm. Her new strength made the heavy labor easy, and her enhanced senses let her monitor the flock better than she ever had as a human. It was a strange life, split between the mundane concerns of farming and the supernatural reality of being a vampire. But Sarah found she liked it, the balance between the two worlds. And through it all, Casimir was there, patient and loving and endlessly supportive. The night of the Vampire Council meeting came in late January. Casimir drove Sarah to an estate even grander than his own, a mansion hidden in the mountains that served as neutral ground for the Eastern Covens. Sarah wore a dress Casimir had bought her, deep red silk that complemented her pale skin and dark hair. She felt nervous, but not afraid. She was a vampire now, with all the power and rights that came with it. They couldn't hurt her or dismiss her anymore. The council chamber was impressive, a great hall filled with vampires of all ages and appearances. Some looked young, turned in their prime. Others bore the weight of centuries in their eyes. All of them turned to watch as Casimir led Sarah to the front of the room. The council itself consisted of 5 vampires seated at a raised table. Sarah recognized their authority in the way the room fell silent when the center counselor, an ancient-looking woman with white hair and silver eyes, raised her hand. Casimir Zorya, king of the Eastern Covens, has requested this audience. Speak, Casimir. Casimir's voice rang out clear and strong. Honored council, I come to present Sarah Aldridge, my mate, newly turned and ready to take her place in vampire society. Murmurs rippled through the assembled vampires. The counselor studied Sarah with those unnerving silver eyes. The human you were protecting, you've turned her. With her full consent and desire, yes. This is unusual. Kings do not typically take such young vampires as mates. With respect, counselor, my personal relationships are my own affair. I bring Sarah before you as a matter of courtesy and to make clear her new status. She is no longer a vulnerability. She is a vampire, my equal and partner. Another counselor, a severe man with dark hair, spoke up. There have been challenges to your authority, Casimir. Accusations of weakness. I'm aware, and I invite any who question my strength to challenge me properly, as our laws dictate. What I won't tolerate is cowardly attacks on those I protect. Casimir's voice hardened. The vampires who threatened Sarah have been warned. If they or anyone else moves against her again, I will consider it an act of war. Strong words, the female counselor said. But Sarah is no longer the fragile human she was. As a vampire, she can defend herself. And as your mate, she comes under your authority and protection automatically. The council recognizes her status. Sarah stepped forward, drawing on every ounce of courage she possessed. If I may speak, honored council. The counselor inclined her head. You may. I understand that my transformation is unusual and that some may see it as evidence of King Casimir's weakness. But I want to make something clear. I chose this. I asked to be turned. Not because I was afraid, though I had reason to be, but because I love Casimir and want to stand beside him for eternity. If that makes him weak, then our understanding of strength must be very different. Silence fell over the hall. Then, to Sarah's surprise, the severe counselor laughed. She has spirit. I like her. He looked at Casimir. You chose well, Zorya. The council recognizes Sarah Aldridge as your mate and as a full member of vampire society with all attendant rights and protections. Is there anyone who wishes to challenge this? Sarah scanned the room, half expecting Kieran or one of his allies to step forward. But no one moved. The message was clear. She was Casimir's now, and to move against her was to move against him. Then it settled. The female counselor said, Welcome to immortality, Sarah Aldridge. May you wear it well. The formalities concluded, and the gathering shifted into something more social. Vampires approached to congratulate them, to size up Sarah with curious eyes, to speak with Casimir about coven business. Sarah handled it with grace she didn't know she possessed, matching names to faces, making conversation, representing herself and Casimir with confidence. She caught him watching her several times throughout the night, pride and love evident in his expression. As they were leaving, Kieran appeared, his neck apparently healed from their last encounter. He blocked their path with a cold smile. Congratulations on your mating, he said, the words clearly costing him. I suppose you think this changes things. It does change things, Casimir said calmly. Sarah is no longer a target. Attack her, and you attack me directly. Are you prepared for that, Kieran? Kieran's eyes flashed red, but he stepped aside. Enjoy your happiness while it lasts, Zorya. Everything ends eventually. Not this, Casimir said, taking Sarah's hand. Not us. They walked out together into the night, leaving Kieran and his impotent threats behind. In the car, Sarah finally let herself relax. Did that really just happen? Am I officially a vampire queen now? Casimir laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Not queen, exactly. That's not really how our hierarchy works. But you're my mate, recognized by the council, which carries significant authority and protection. And the challenges to your rule? Will continue probably, but through proper channels now. They can't use you against me anymore, and without that leverage, their position is much weaker. He brought her hand to his lips. You were magnificent tonight, Sarah. The way you spoke to the council, the way you carried yourself. I've never been more proud. I learned from the best, Sarah said softly. You've taught me so much these past months. How to be strong, how to believe in myself. I'm not the same person I was when you first came to my farm. No, you're better. You were always strong, Sarah. You just needed to see it yourself. They drove back to Sarah's farm through the winter night. It was still her home, the place she'd chosen to build her life. But now it represented something more. It was where she'd met Casimir, where she'd fought monsters and fallen in love, where she'd become something more than human. The sheep were settled in their pen, safe and calm. The fields lay quiet under the stars. Everything looked the same, but Sarah saw it all differently now with her vampire eyes. Every detail was sharper, clearer, more vivid. What are you thinking? Casimir asked, coming up behind her on the porch, wrapping his arms around her waist. That I'm happy. Happier than I ever imagined I could be. Sarah leaned back against him. 6 months ago, I was alone and exhausted, fighting a monster I didn't understand, thinking my new life was falling apart. Now I have you. I have purpose. I have forever stretching out ahead of me. It's almost too much to believe. Believe it, Casimir said, turning her in his arms. This is real, Sarah. You and me, together for as long as time lasts. Nothing will separate us now. Promise me, Sarah said, suddenly fierce. Promise me that no matter what challenges come, no matter what tries to tear us apart, we'll face it together. I promise, Casimir said solemnly. Together, always. You're mine, Sarah, and I'm yours. Nothing will change that. He kissed her under the stars, and Sarah kissed him back with all the love and passion in her immortal heart. The months that followed were peaceful. Spring came to the farm, bringing new lambs and green growth. Sarah hired a farm manager to handle the daytime work, a kind woman named Margaret who asked no questions about Sarah's nocturnal schedule. Casimir spent most of his time at the farm now, having moved many of his belongings from his estate. They talked about combining households officially, maybe building something new that belonged to both of them. But for now, Sarah's farmhouse was enough. They fell into comfortable domesticity, strange as that seemed for two vampires. Sarah still tended her sheep, Casimir still managed vampire politics, but they did it all together now. He accompanied her on her nightly rounds of the farm. She attended council meetings at his side. They were partners in every sense of the word. Sarah also discovered talents she hadn't known she possessed. Her artistic side, suppressed during her years in the corporate world, emerged now that she had the enhanced vision and steady hands of a vampire. She started painting, capturing the nighttime beauty of the farm in oils and watercolors. Casimir hung her work throughout the house with pride, and the physical side of their relationship only deepened. With immortality came freedom from urgency. They could spend hours learning each other, exploring pleasure without the pressure of limited time. Sarah had never felt so cherished, so desired, so completely loved. But underneath the happiness, she knew challenges would come. Kieran hadn't made another move, but his threat lingered, and there were practicalities to consider. Sarah's family and friends from her human life would eventually notice she never aged. She'd have to disappear from their lives, create a new identity, become someone else. It hurt to think about losing those connections, but it was the price of immortality. One evening in early summer, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies dance over the fields, Sarah brought it up. I called my mother today, she said quietly. Told her I was moving abroad for work, that I'd sold the farm. I hated lying to her, but what else could I say? Casimir took her hand, understanding in his eyes. I'm sorry. That's one of the hardest parts of turning, leaving behind the people who knew you as human. Will it get easier? Eventually. The pain fades with time, as most pain does, and you'll make new connections, build new relationships with people who know what you are. The vampire community can become a kind of family if you let it. What about you? Do you still miss your human family? Sometimes, Casimir admitted. I had a sister I loved very much. I watched her grow old and die centuries ago, and I still think of her. But time puts distance between you and that grief. You learn to hold the love and let go of the loss. Sarah rested her head on his shoulder. I'm glad I have you. I don't think I could do this alone. You'll never have to. I'm here, Sarah. Always. They sat in comfortable silence, and Sarah felt a deep sense of contentment settle over her. This was her life now, centuries stretching ahead with the man she loved. There would be challenges, yes, but they would face them together. The challenge came sooner than expected. 2 weeks later, Casimir received a summons to the main vampire court in New York. A formal challenge had been filed against his authority, claiming he was unfit to rule the Eastern Covens. The challenger was Kieran. This is serious, Casimir said, reading the formal document. A challenge at the main court means he has support from other regions. If I lose everything. My position, my authority, possibly my life depending on the terms. Then we won't lose, Sarah said firmly. What do you need from me? I need you to stay here, stay safe. This is vampire politics at its most dangerous. If Kieran defeats me, he'll come after you next. Absolutely not. Sarah crossed her arms. We're in this together, remember? Where you go, I go. Sarah, be reasonable. You're still a newborn. You've only been a vampire for a few months. A fight like this could destroy you. Then teach me. Train me. We have 2 weeks before the challenge, right? Use that time to make me strong enough to stand beside you. Casimir looked torn. I can't risk you. And I can't sit here safe while you face danger alone. That's not who I am, Casimir. You know that. Sarah stepped closer, taking his hands. I love you. I'm your mate. If you lose, I lose too. So let me fight for us. Please. He studied her face for a long moment, then sighed in defeat. You're right. We're in this together. He pulled her close. Then we train. Hard. I'll push you to your limits and beyond. It won't be easy. I don't need easy. I need to be ready. The next 2 weeks were brutal. Casimir trained Sarah in combat, pushing her newborn strength and speed to their limits. They sparred for hours each night, him teaching her how to fight, how to use her vampire abilities defensively and offensively. Sarah threw herself into it with determination. She was bruised and battered by the end of each session, her clothes torn, her body aching even with vampire healing. But she got better, faster, stronger. Her instincts sharpened, her reactions quickened. Casimir was a demanding teacher, offering no quarter, treating her like the warrior she needed to become. But he was also encouraging, praising her progress, believing in her potential. You're a natural fighter, he said, after she managed to land a solid hit on him for the first time. Your instincts are excellent. A few more years of experience and you'll be formidable. I don't have years. I have days. Sarah wiped blood from her split lip, already feeling it heal. Push me harder. He did. By the time they left for New York, Sarah was as ready as she could be. She'd never be a match for ancient vampires in single combat, but she could hold her own, defend herself, be an asset rather than a liability. The main vampire court was located beneath the city in a vast underground complex that looked like something from a Gothic cathedral merged with a palace. Vampires from all over the country had gathered for the challenge, the halls filled with power and danger. Casimir and Sarah were given chambers to prepare. As they dressed for the challenge, Sarah felt her nerves trying to surface. What if I'm not ready? What if I fail you? Casimir cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. You could never fail me, Sarah. Whatever happens tonight, I'm proud of you. You've come so far in such a short time, and I love you more than I've ever loved anyone in 3 centuries of existence. I love you too. Sarah kissed him, pouring everything she felt into the contact. Let's go win this. The challenge took place in a great arena, surrounded by tiered seating filled with vampires. At the center stood Kieran, dressed for battle, confidence radiating from every line of his body. Behind him stood several other vampires, his supporters. Casimir and Sarah entered from the opposite side, and Sarah felt every eye in the arena fix on them. The vampire queen who served as judge, an ancient creature named Valentina, who made the Eastern Council look young, sat on a throne overlooking the arena. Kieran of the Northern Coven challenges Casimir Zorya for leadership of the Eastern Covens, Valentina announced, her voice carrying throughout the space. The challenge is accepted. State your terms. Trial by combat, Kieran said. To first blood or surrender. If I win, Casimir steps down and I assume leadership. If he wins, I accept his authority without question. Casimir, do you accept these terms? I do, Casimir said clearly, but I add a condition. My mate fights at my side. This challenge is against both of us. Murmurs erupted throughout the arena. Kieran's expression twisted with anger. That's not traditional. Neither is challenging a king with political backing from other regions, Casimir shot back. You brought allies to strengthen your position. I'm doing the same. Valentina considered. The condition is acceptable. Kieran, you may choose an ally to fight alongside you. Kieran gestured, and one of his supporters stepped forward, a massive vampire with scarred features. Dmitri fights with me. Then let it be 2 against 2. Valentina raised her hand. Begin. The fight erupted with brutal speed. Kieran came straight for Casimir while Dmitri charged Sarah. She dodged his first strike, using the speed Casimir had drilled into her, and countered with a hit to his ribs. Dmitri barely flinched, grabbing for her with hands like steel traps. Sarah ducked under his reach and swept his legs, actually managing to knock the larger vampire off balance. She pressed her advantage, landing several quick strikes before Dmitri recovered and backhanded her hard enough to send her flying. She hit the arena wall and dropped, dazed. Through blurred vision, she saw Casimir and Kieran locked in combat, moving so fast they were almost impossible to follow. They were evenly matched, both ancient and skilled, and neither giving ground. Dmitri advanced on Sarah, clearly planning to eliminate the weaker opponent first. Sarah forced herself to her feet, calling on every ounce of strength she possessed. She couldn't beat this vampire in a straight fight, but Casimir had taught her she didn't have to. She just had to survive, to keep Dmitri occupied so Casimir could focus on Kieran. She led Dmitri on a chase around the arena, using her speed to stay ahead of him, striking when she could, evading when she couldn't. It was exhausting and terrifying, but she held on, refusing to give up. Meanwhile, Casimir and Kieran's battle intensified. They traded blows that would have killed humans, their vampire healing keeping them in the fight despite the damage. Blood spattered the arena floor. The watching vampires were on their feet, shouting encouragement or jeering depending on their allegiances. Sarah saw her opening when Dmitri overextended, committing too much to a strike. She slipped inside his guard and drove her fist into his throat with all her newborn strength. Dmitri choked, staggering back, and Sarah followed up with a kick to his knee that buckled his leg. She'd hurt him, actually hurt him, but it wasn't enough. Dmitri recovered quickly, fury in his eyes now. He charged her like a bull, and Sarah knew she couldn't dodge this time. Then Casimir was there, having moved with that impossible speed, intercepting Dmitri and driving him to the ground. Casimir held Kieran's ally, pinned with one hand while facing Kieran himself, who had followed. "It's over, Kieran," Casimir said. "Yield. Never." Kieran attacked, and Casimir met him blow for blow, but he was protecting Sarah now, limiting his movements. Kieran sensed the advantage and pressed harder. Sarah saw it happening, saw Casimir starting to lose ground because he was trying to keep her safe. She couldn't let that happen. She'd promised to fight beside him, not be a burden. She grabbed Dmitri, who was trying to rise, and with strength born of desperation, she drove him face first back into the arena floor. Then she turned to face Kieran, placing herself at Casimir's side. Together, they fought. Sarah matched Casimir's rhythm, covering his openings while he created opportunities for her to strike. They moved like a single unit, their connection allowing them to anticipate each other's moves. Kieran faltered, unable to adapt to fighting two opponents who worked in perfect sync. Casimir landed a devastating blow to Kieran's chest, sending him stumbling back. Sarah followed through with a strike to his head that made him drop to one knee. Casimir's hand was at Kieran's throat in an instant, claws extended, ready to draw first blood and end the challenge. "Yield," Casimir commanded. For a long moment, Kieran's pride warred with his survival instinct. Then, reluctantly, he lowered his head. "I yield." The arena erupted in cheers and shouts. Valentina stood, raising her hands for silence. The challenge is decided. Casimir Zorya retains his position as king of the Eastern Covens. Kieran and his supporters will accept his authority as agreed. Casimir helped Kieran to his feet, offering him a measure of respect despite their enmity. "If you channel your ambition into supporting the Covens instead of undermining them, you could be a valuable asset, Kieran. Think about that." Kieran's expression was complicated, anger and grudging respect mingling. "You fight well, Zorya, both of you. Perhaps I underestimated you." "Don't make that mistake again," Sarah said quietly. Kieran actually smiled at that, brief and sharp. Then he nodded to them both and withdrew, his supporters following. Casimir turned to Sarah, pulling her into his arms despite the watching crowd. "You were incredible. I've never seen a newborn vampire fight like that." "I had a good teacher," Sarah said, relief and exhaustion washing over her. "Is it really over?" "It's over. We won." Casimir kissed her forehead. "Together, just like you promised." They left the arena as victors, Casimir's position secured, their bond proven in blood and combat. The vampire community had seen that Sarah was more than just a human turned on a whim. She was a fighter, a partner worthy of their king. The journey home to Virginia felt different. They'd left as a couple facing uncertain challenges. They returned as proven mates, their strength and commitment tested and validated. Summer was in full bloom when they arrived back at the farm. The sheep were thriving under Margaret's care, the fields lush and green. Sarah stood on the porch in the warm night air and felt a profound sense of homecoming. "This is where it all started," she said, as Casimir joined her. "You came to this farm to kill a Wendigo, and you ended up changing my entire life." "You changed mine too," Casimir said. "I'd been alone for so long, going through the motions of ruling and existing. Then I met you, this stubborn human woman with a shotgun and more courage than sense, and suddenly, I remembered what it felt like to truly live." "No regrets?" Sarah asked. "None. You?" "Not one." Sarah turned to face him fully. "I know we'll face more challenges. The vampire world is complicated, and there will always be someone who questions your authority or our relationship. But I'm not afraid anymore. We've proven we can handle whatever comes." "We have." Casimir gathered her close. "I love you, Sarah, my queen, my mate, my partner for eternity." "I love you too, Casimir, my protector, my teacher, my king." They stood together on the porch where they'd first met, where he'd promised to end her nightmare in one night. He'd done so much more than that. He'd given her a new life, a new purpose, and a love that would last forever. The farm stretched out before them, peaceful and beautiful in the moonlight. This was their home, their sanctuary, the place where they'd found each other against all odds, and they had eternity to enjoy it together.